Are we ready? Let's get started, y'all. You get, are you ready? Kevin, are you ready? I know Duncan and Brant are ready. You get 2 for the price of 1 on this session. Right before appointment setting time and a really, really fun wrap up, we're going to go into almost kind of the crescendo of the 8 essential success elements, and that's building a high-functioning leadership team. So you get, in this presentation, Brant Taylor and Duncan Ham. Brant's one of our division presidents, and Duncan Ham, if you all didn't know, has gone through the process and is one of our new organizational leaders. So welcome to the stage, Brant Taylor.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. All right. So we're going to start with some people reading in the back. I feel like we've passed the microphone around in the front. So Duncan Ham is going to be our microphone aficionado. So I want to start with this quote. Duncan, can you pick somebody to read this one?
I am fully convinced that behind any company, organization, team, or family that has experienced long-term success, there's a group of people at the top with a high level of trust and communication that creates alignment and buy-in around the priorities, values, and goals of the group. Forming and maintaining a cohesive leadership team should be the #1 focus of the leaders of any organization.
Eamon asked me in this last section, are the order of the essential success elements, are they in order of priority? And maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I believe that the one that we're going to talk about right now should be the foundation of all the other 7 elements. Because I personally believe that we can't continue to move up in each of those elements consistently if we don't have this one in place, right? Todd said in his beginning session that a lot of us are, we make decisions based on the experiences and some of the convictions that we have from those experiences. And I can just tell you, first and foremost, I'm so convicted in the power of a strong leadership team. So when I started in 2017, when I got the privilege to start leading the Atlanta office, the first thing that I did was I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, right? We didn't have a blueprint for this, and so I'm like, I have to get a team together. We have to get a group of people that I'm in alignment with to help us grow this thing. And it wasn't because of that I felt like I knew a lot about leadership or I'd read a lot about leadership at that point. A lot of it was just based out of insecurities and self-doubt of like, I don't know exactly what I need to do right now, right? And so I needed a Bill Yonke. I needed the wisdom and the tenure and the vision of somebody like a Bill. I needed the energy of a Brett, right? If I gave a morning meeting every single month, like everybody would fall asleep, right? So it's like I needed some energy on the leadership team, right? I needed somebody that like an Eamon or that is like willing to come in and do whatever he needs to do to be the rabbit, to grow and to lead and sell at a high level. Angela at the time was our most conscious, competent in regards to training and leading. So I'm like, we need an Angela on the leadership team. I needed somebody like a Ryan that has that calm presence and that loyalty and just the character, right? Hector coming in, bringing the energy every single day. So when you think about a leadership team, what I love about it is it takes some of your strengths, your weaknesses, and it puts us all into this one cohesive group if we work on some of these principles we're going to talk about, and it allows you to execute at a really high level. So we're going to, the way that this session is going to go is we're going to watch a video. We're going to talk about some leadership principles in regards to building a strong, cohesive team. I'm going to share just a couple things that I've learned just with the stores I get to lead. And then Duncan is actually going to come up and walk through the process that he's gone through whenever he ranked himself in this rubric. Not only did he do it, but he asked some of the other leaders in his store to do it, and I think it'll be eye-opening to see the process that he went through. So let's watch this video from Simon Sinek.
Trusting teams. I went on a business trip to Las Vegas, and they put me up at the Four Seasons out there, which is a beautiful hotel. And one of the reasons it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can buy a fancy bed. The reason the Four Seasons is a fantastic hotel is because of the people who work there. That when you roam the halls and somebody says hello, you get the distinct feeling that they wanted to say hello, not that they were told to say hello. We're highly tuned social animals. We can tell the difference. It's like we can always tell when someone's working on commission, right? You can kind of feel it, right? We can tell the difference when somebody's genuinely being friendly or not. They happen to have a coffee bar in the lobby there at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas, and one afternoon I went and bought myself a cup of coffee. And there was a barista working that day named Noah. Noah was funny and engaging, charming. I spent far too long standing there buying my cup of coffee because I just so enjoyed talking to Noah. So, as is my nature, I asked Noah a question. I said, "Do you like your job?" And without skipping a beat, Noah said, "I love my job." Now, in my line of business, that's significant because like is rational. I like the people I work with, I like the job, I like the challenge, I get paid well, I like my job. Love is emotional. It's a higher order connection. Do you love your wife? I like her a lot, right? There's a difference. Noah said, "I love my job." My ears perked up. He has an emotional connection to this company. This is interesting. So I immediately follow up and I said, "Tell me specifically what the Four Seasons is doing that you would say to me you love your job." Without skipping a beat, Noah said that throughout the day, managers will walk past him and ask him how he's doing, ask him if there's anything that he needs to do his job better. Not just his manager, any manager. And then he also said, "I also work at Caesar's Palace. And there, the managers walk past us and catch us when we're doing things wrong and make sure that we're making the numbers and performing. And there I like to just keep my head below the radar and get through the day and collect my paycheck." He said, "Only at the Four Seasons do I feel I can be myself." This is the exact same human being. And yet the customer service experience that we would have meeting him at one hotel or the other will be profoundly different, not because of the person, but because of the leaders, because of the leadership environment in which he's been asked to work. I get this question all the time. "Simon, how do we get the most out of our people?" They're not a towel. We don't wring them out to see how much we can get out of our people. It's a flawed question, which means we're going to get flawed answers. The correct question is, how do we create an environment in which our people can work at their natural best? And the answers will be profoundly different. If you do not have trusting teams, what you do have is a group of people who show up to work every single day lying, hiding, and faking. Remember, a trusting team is when people feel safe. It's a trusting team is when people feel they can be vulnerable amongst their own. They can raise their hand and say, "I made a mistake." Or, "You've promoted me to a position where I don't really know what to do. I think I need more training." Or, "I'm having troubles at home and it's affecting my work." Or, "I'm scared." Or, "I need help." Without any fear of humiliation, without any fear of retribution. In fact, they say these things with confidence that their leader, their boss, their colleagues will rush to them to support them. If you do not have trusting teams, what you have is a group of people who show up to work every day who will hide mistakes for fear of getting in trouble.
Okay, hopefully this hits home a little bit, right? So the things that I got from this video, and when I think about building a trusting team, is the first thing that he says that the leadership team is the one that determines the culture, right? We should know this, right? It's an interesting, fascinating phenomenon that you have one person who works at two different places that can act completely different depending on the environment, right? We have a lot of new hires and we have a lot of partners in our office that don't act the way that we should or that we think they should. But a lot of that is because of the environment that we've created, right? And so you could have one person that's hired in one office succeed and they are hired in a different office and they don't succeed. How is that possible, right? It's because of the culture that the leadership team's created. He didn't actually say this in this video, it's about 2 minutes later, but one of the things that he talks about is that it's a career-long process. It's not something that ends, it's something we have to continually work on. If I look back over the last 8 or 9 years, it's like there's been teams when I feel like our leadership team is clicking, and there's sometimes where I'm like, man, like we're fragmented. Like there's some stuff going on we got to go to work on. So do you have a Four Seasons or do you have a Caesars culture? And just like we talked about, the same person can thrive or fail because of the environment. There's 2 books that if you haven't read, I would recommend them very, very highly. One is 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. It sounds very formal, but it's not. All of Lencioni's books are fables, and so it's basically it's a fictional tale that applies nonfiction principles. And so one of the things that he talks about in here as he goes through the 4 obsessions, which you're going to see in a second, is that number 1 is building and maintaining a cohesive leadership team. And he talks about the significance of that. The second book I would recommend is obviously 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And that's one of the most practical examples and just of tools that you can use to work on your leadership team. So in the 4 obsessions, what he talks about is 4 different principles. So Duncan, where's the mic? Can I have somebody read these 4 just real fast?
4 obsessions up on the screen. 4 obsessions of an extraordinary executive.
Sorry. My bad. There we go.
Number 1, build and maintain a cohesive leadership team. Number 2, create organizational clarity. Number 3, over-communicate organizational clarity. And number 4, reinforce organizational clarity through human systems.
So what are we doing right now at this meeting? Which one of these? We're doing number 2, right? What are we going to do after this meeting? We're going to do number 3. And then what are we going to do for the next 5 years? Number 4, right? But Lencioni argues that you can't do 2, 3, and 4 if you don't have 1, right? Jeff can be the best leader in the world. He could take all this information, and he goes back to Houston. If he doesn't get that leadership team bought in, as some terms would say, it's dead on arrival, right? It's not gonna implement, right? And so the filter I've been running the last 2 days through is like, I want to have a lot of conversations with my leadership team about what the things that we talked about here are and how we're going to implement them, right? And then we go back and based on that, we say, all right, this is the clarity that we've taken from this meeting. How do we implement this in our office? And then how do we build a human system to continually emphasize this office in September, October, November, December? How do we do it in 2026, 2027? And it's just a consistent thing. But we have to remember that number 1 has to be in place in order for the other 2 or the other 3 to take place, right? The other thing that I want to make sure that we emphasize and that we're all, when you look at the 8 elements, the leadership team one to me is a little bit of an outlier compared to the other 7, right? There's a lot of gray, maybe a little bit more gray area than the other ones. There's facts that I think can obviously show if you have a cohesive leadership team, but it's a lot of art, right? And one of the things that I've heard, and as we've walked through this, is I understand this if you have a leadership team of 5, 10, 15 people, but what if we're a smaller office? Like, what if we only have a couple people on our leadership team? I think about this quote. Who's next?
Building a cohesive leadership team is the most critical of the 4 disciplines because it enables the other 3. It is also the most elusive because it requires considerable interpersonal commitment from an executive team and its leader.
So if you think about a family unit, if you think about a normal family, who's the leadership team of a family? The parents, right? It's not Uncle Carl, right? It's not, I mean, that maybe if the uncle is a part of that family, really tight, but for the most part, the family unit, the leadership team are the parents, right? And so if we all don't mind, I want to just, I'm going to ask you all to be vulnerable for a second. If you don't feel comfortable raising your hand, you don't have to. If you came from a home that you would look back and say, the home was either broken or there wasn't an ideal situation between your mom and your dad, can you raise your hand? Okay, so about a third of the room. If you came from a family that you would say was a healthy relationship, or there was a cohesive relationship between your mom and your dad, or your parents, raise your hand. Okay? So the point in that, I'm not saying that if you come from a broken home or a relationship that wasn't ideal, you don't turn out to be a wild success, right? In fact, a lot of times you can argue the opposite. If you look at some of the most successful people, they have a motivation to succeed that comes from the things that they didn't have whenever they were young, right? And so a lot of times that can actually be a good thing, right? And I'm not saying that just because you came from a healthy family that you're going to be a wild success. There's a lot of screw-ups that come from really, really good families, right? And so that's not necessarily a one-to-one indicator, right? I think if we could go back, though, and we would do it again, whether if you're a parent now or you're a future parent or you can just imagine yourself being a parent, all of us would say, I think, if I could choose between one of the two, I would prefer to model a relationship that is a healthy, cohesive unit in my family unit, right? There are very few of us that would say, I just want my kids to be raised in a broken home, right? That's not necessarily how we go into it, right? So when I think about a family dynamic, I think a lot of times how impactful two people are to generation, right? Think about, for those of y'all that have ever been to counseling, you really understand this, about how your parents and how your upbringing raises and how it affects how you are right now, right? And so you think about this, two people, the leadership team is just two people in a family unit. It affects your kids. It's going to affect how your kids interact with their spouse, how they interact with their kids. It's going to affect how your kids interact with their spouse and their kids. And so two people can have a dramatic effect one way or the other on generations, thousands and thousands of people, right? It's the same thing to me with a leadership team. 2 weeks ago, some of y'all know my grandpa turned 90 years old, and I call him John. So he lives just north of Austin in Georgetown, and I brought Hudson and Bennett, and we went over and we celebrated, celebrated his life, celebrated his birthday, right? It was funny when he blew out his candle, he said, "This is not my last breath." You gotta love the witty old guys, man, but it was, I've shared this a little bit. Hector and I were together last Friday, and I shared just a little bit of them. It was actually a really tough weekend. And the reason why is for the last 2 to 3 years, my dad and my grandpa have just had a growing distance between the two of them. And it all started when my grandma passed away. There was just stuff that went down, and it just has escalated. It escalated even into a physical altercation between my dad and my grandpa. Just a lot of stuff, right? And so when we were over there, we flew in on a Thursday night, and my brother and I were at my parents' house, and my dad didn't get invited to my grandpa's birthday, right? And what I realized in that moment, I was like, well, let me back up. When we were there, my dad pulled my brother and I into his office, and he said, "I've been working on, I don't really journal, but for the last 5 to 10 years, I've journaled a lot because there's a lot of things going on between John, and myself, and the only way that I know how to process it is to journal it and write it down." And so it was pretty heavy, but he gave us he gave one for my brother, one for me. And it was 12 pages, single space, typed out, of thoughts that he's been writing down for the last 5 to 10 years. And it included stories about my grandpa that I wasn't aware of, and stories that in some ways I didn't want to know. There were stories that my dad was really vulnerable with in that packet, and some stories I wasn't aware of, and some stories I didn't want to know. But he was doing that. He wasn't doing it to convince us one way or the other. He's just like, I feel like I've been, I haven't told y'all the real deal from myself, and then from the interactions that I've had with, your grandpa. And I want that to change. And I want to lay it all out there, and I want y'all to know the things that are going on in my heart and my life and all that kind of stuff. So my point in sharing that is like, what I realized is like, the dynamics in a family unit, even between two people, that had a big effect on me. And it's like, I came back from that weekend, I told Sarah, I'm like, that was heavy. And it gave me a lot of motivation in a good way for me to say, I don't I don't want that with my dad. In regards to I don't want that with my kids. I don't want that, obviously between Sarah and I. And so I'm like, that gave me motivation for Sarah and I to be stronger than ever. It gave me motivation for Hudson and I to be stronger than ever, and my kids. And so I think that when I think about a leadership team, all it's to say is like, I don't see it just as we're executing strategy within Tom James, right? It's like, I see it as like, I want to be such a cohesive unit with the team and the leaders that I get to work with, where we can go to work on making sure that we have a positive impact on all the people we get to lead, and they're going to do the same thing with the people they get to lead, and you get the idea, and you continue to go down generations and generations. Let's give it to whoever's next.
The essence of a cohesive leadership team is trust, which is marked by an absence of politics, unnecessary anxiety, and wasted energy. Every leader wants to achieve this, but few are able to do so because they fail to understand the roots of these problems, the most damaging of which is politics.
Has anybody seen The Captain with Derek Jeter documentary? If you haven't, it's fantastic, even if you're not a Yankees fan. But one of the things that Derek Jeter talks about in there, he's like, not only was my role to perform well on the baseball field, but my number one role was to eliminate distractions for the Yankees, right? They were a media mogul in the 90s, right? And they got stuff that happened and they got put in the news, and it was just a distraction, right? And so I think about my role as a leader is like, not only is my role to perform really well within Tom James, but my role is to eliminate politics. That's the number one thing that Lencioni says will cause division in teams. And so my radar is always up. Who shared the video, Dash, where it's that in the beginning of your sections, like keeping that standard? It doesn't matter where the standard is, as long as you're applying it evenly, that's where the trust comes in. And so I'm like, my radar is always up. Are we being duplicitous? Are we applying this to one person? Are we applying this to this in a different way? So I think as leaders, it's important for us to keep that as a standard. Next person.
I believe that all successful organizations share two qualities. They are smart and they are healthy. An organization demonstrates that it is smart by developing intelligent strategies, marketing plans, product features, and financial models that lead to competitive advantages over its rivals. It demonstrates that it is healthy by eliminating politics and confusion, which leads to higher morale, lower turnover, and higher productivity.
That's good. This is just I just put together a list of just some overall themes. Before we start grading on the rubric, this is just, again, from a personal perspective, what I've seen as far as some signs of a cohesive and a healthy team. You can see all these. We don't need to read every single one of them. But the things that I want to point out specifically is that they have a lot of fun. Right? This job is hard, man. And we've talked about this all the time. But if you're not having fun with your core team, then to me, you don't have a healthy team. Right? There's something that's going on that's causing you to not to be guarded or to not be in a good spot. Secondly, if your meetings are lame or there's not conflict, or like you don't have some fights every once in a while, I don't think you have a cohesive team. Right? There's a lot of false harmony going on. And so when I see when I see interpersonal conflict, as long as it's not attacking the person and their personality, I love it because it's like fun. One, it's just kind of fun, like to watch people go at it. That's just maybe me. But also, two, it's I think that a lot of good conversations and a lot of good ideas come out from those. And so there's times where it's like I'll leave a goal day and I'm like, that was not good. Like it was either I was talking the whole time or like everybody was in agreement. It's like there wasn't any conflict to me. Like that to me is a very, very clear sign. So these are just some markers of a healthy and a cohesive team. These are some markers of a team that I believe is not cohesive. To me, the biggest one is talking behind the meeting after the meeting, right? If we leave this meeting, or if we have sub meetings, and we leave this meeting, we're like, I get what they're trying to do at Tom James, but I don't understand this, right? That to me already shows you don't have a cohesive team, right? And so if there's all these like sub meetings after the meeting, there's an issue there. So get them out in the meeting, and I want to be able to create a safe space where, I'm changing it on here, but not on there. There we go. Non-cohesive or unhealthy meeting. If meetings are happening after the meeting, then there's a problem, right? You can read through these. These are just some overarching signs to me of an unhealthy or an uncohesive office. All right, and then let me just finish a couple of these real fast, and then I'm going to bring Duncan up. In regards to Tom James, again, this is my paradigm. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's universally true, but I would need some convincing otherwise. There's three things that I've seen that are the biggest trust breakers within an office. Number one, how do you handle names? What's your abundance like with those names? Number two, when somebody leaves, how do you handle the clients? And then number three, are you talking directly to the source? I think about all the drama of issues over the last 10 years, and I think 90% of them would be taken care of if those three things were in place. So does your office have a system in place, or are you communicating at a high level with your leadership team about how do you eliminate these? How do you make sure that we're applying principles to these three? We want to model abundance. We got to be the ones that are actually taking those hard conversations as leaders, right? And obviously the purpose is to increase sales and to grow retention. So let me just show you a couple real quick things, just some rhythms that we have that I think are helpful. This is at the beginning. Eamon and I were talking about this earlier. One just quick and easy way that I think all of us can go up in one level across all 8 elements is, what are the things that you do consistently to repeat the things that are important in your office? And so we have a deck at Goal Day, and we just add to it every single time there's something important we want to cover. The beginning of this year, we created a leaders goal deck. And so every single OPD, we go and we have a leaders meeting for 2.5 hours, and we go through a leaders deck. And so we remind everybody, first and foremost, what's the purpose of a leaders meeting and why are we doing it? Just to create alignment and clarity, and there's not confusion. We go through the principles of the Atlanta office. We could cover 50 principles, but as a leadership team, we've identified for us, these are the 4 that we want to continue to communicate at least this year. And so talking about the abundance mentality, sharing stories, no one person is greater than the team. Y'all have heard that one. Seek first to understand. Go directly to the source. 3 or 4 months ago, we added the bottom one because people were just being jerks to our OPs and our assistants. And it's like, we have to bring that up because it's not natural to treat, sometimes it's not natural to treat people with respect. So everybody sees this every single month. It's not a, we don't use it as a tactic. It's like, I believe that we are trying to adhere to those things, but that's a human system where we just put it in place to where people see it every single month. We remind our leaders, what's our standard? We had 5 or 6 leaders that were under 100 units. And so we said at a minimum, we expect our leaders to be over 100. And if they're not, we're not gonna get onto them, but we're gonna come alongside and do whatever we got to do to help them get to over 100. And it's a motivator for a lot of them, right? We're getting really clear on committees and owning those committees and making sure everybody's clear on their roles. You've seen this before. And then I want to highlight this one real fast. So we've had a couple people retire, and then, can y'all see that okay? Kind of? You get the gist, right? This is, so Rick Trotter retired at the beginning of this year, and we actually started this whenever Jill moved up to Greenville. And Bill started, I can't tell you how many hours Bill has spent between Jill and Rick and just others that have retired and that have left. And so one of the things that we did is we said, based on, at this time, the names policy, the distribution policy, I think you had to be over 378 in 6 months. And it's recently changed that, you have to be here for more than 6 months, et cetera. But these are everybody that's eligible. And we spent hours going through this and identifying who do we think would work best. And then after that, we tried to fill it in as best as possible to make it as even as possible. And then we showed this list to everybody that was eligible to receive clients. We didn't show this to the entire office, but every single person knows these are the clients that Eamon's getting. This is how much they bought in the last 3 years, and then this is why. And if anybody had any issues with it, then we were able to discuss it and talk about it on the front end versus them being surprised on the back end. So the transparency was really big with that one. And then lastly, obviously, the names policy. Ryan covered this one in the one earlier, but we're just constantly going back. We show this every single month. We talk about this all the time. I can't think of another just day-to-day thing that causes more tension, is it just being scarce within your names. So, all right, let's bring up Mr. Duncan Ham, please.
You to keep your,
Yeah, just use that.
okay. All right. Everybody hear me? Does everybody know who I am? There I am. All right. So, oh, we're not moving over here though. Oh, I had a button on. There we go. Let's get off of that one. Okay. I'm glad I've got the 7th one because we're kind of getting familiar with Ruby the rubric, right? And how to use it. And I'm going to talk about the leadership team rubric. And I'm excited to talk about this. Was right now, Charlotte's getting better results than we've ever gotten, right? Mary Kate, I hope you can back me up on that. But our new partners are doing well. Like the last 2 months, 3 out of 4 were over quota. We had one at 90, one at 85, one at 65. I'm like, yes, leadership team is doing a great job with training. We're getting all the referrals. We're seeing 5 a day. New partners are doing great. I'm finally in a circle of 5, right? 5, 4, 4, 4, feeling good, right? I mean, why not? Like we're doing, for the first time in a long time, we're doing great. I should probably share this with the leadership team and see what they say. And I'm glad I did. And you've probably noticed, and hopefully you have in your in some of your breakout sessions, that you may have circled one, but after a little discussion, you're like, yeah, maybe I'm this one, right? And that's what's happened here. And then what's funny is recently, well, not funny, but to prove the point, I've had a couple texts with some of the leaders in the last 48 hours that even showed me like, okay, this is what we got to work on. Even though we're getting some results here, right, we could be getting better results, which is what I heard from Todd the first day, right? I'm like, right now, our outputs are good. And I see that word differently now too, right? But our outputs are good, but we're missing great because we're at a 2 or a 3 in some of these areas. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that looked like. So frequency, I can have a 5 because frequency is schedule, right? And you either, and look, I have been in a 1-person office, a 2-person office, right? When I got to Charlotte, we had 12. Now we have 4. So I've seen all the different sizes. And you may have no leadership team, right? But I would encourage you to tether yourself to a leadership team. It's like what that looks like in our organization is every Monday we have a call with the store leaders in North and South Carolina. And we have a 1-person office in Columbia, but he's able to join our calls every single Monday. So there's some frequency there for him. Number 2, informal leadership team, very reactive and proactive. I've definitely been a part of that. That's like we're going to get together when we need to get together because something's on fire, right? Number 3, the informal leadership team that follows a monthly schedule. Maybe you get together on OPD, right? The 4th one is clearly defined leadership team, roles, expectations, or criteria to join as Brant just shared with Atlanta, schedule weekly leadership team. But right now, we have a meeting every single Monday. We meet and discuss before OPD for 2 hours to talk about what's going to happen for OPD and for the month. We do have a retreat on we have one quarterly. Our next one is the 3rd. We're going to bump that up because Steve's going to be in town, and after some of these rubrics, we got some big things to discuss. So I'll use his backup. But we are doing this, all right? So that one we did get a 5. Now this one I thought we were at a 4, but I learned that in what's keeping us from that is the leadership team members are not beginning to challenge or engage in healthy conflict. So as Brant just talked about, we were having some false harmony. I thought everything was great. Everything was harmonizing, right? But the leadership team is like, nah, not so much. It's like, okay, tell me more. But then you go to purpose. And I think part of that is I've got great leaders on the team. But are they taking ownership? Or is it me bringing it and they're saying, all right, I'll go do it because that's my job as a leader. Right? And they helped me realize that. But the big one was here. I thought we were a 4 or 5, but they let me know that we've got some personality-based issues in our office. And it's like, what does that look like? Because it's tricky. When everyone looks like they're getting along, but then just maybe yesterday, I got a text from a lady that said, this is why we're stuck at a 3. I asked so-and-so to field train this person. They said they would not get them referrals. They're a selfish, unprofessional word, and that's why we can't get past a 3. Now, what was the problem with that? That's right. They came to me with it, which is, of course, what I told them. I said, the reason we're at a 3 is because we've got to start going to each other with this, or we will never be able to be great. We'll only be good. Or maybe we're only good for a short while, eventually come crashing down, right? And so I know what to go work on now. And that was just a really close example that I thought I could share with you all. So I'd encourage on some of these rubrics, you may want to share with your leadership team to get their feedback to see where things are, right? Or maybe it's not your leadership team in your office, maybe it's a leadership team of peers, right? Which I hope that we're doing today. So these are going to be our breakout session speakers, Angela, Brett, myself, and Brant. And some of the things to filter, all right, that sounds like a lot. Where do I start? First, do you have a cadence? Do we have a schedule? Even if you're in a one-person office, who can I tether with? How can I get a schedule going? And then who? Who's it going to be? What are their roles, right? So I can't do it all. I want to use, delegate my weaknesses and use other people's strengths. And then what's your purpose, right? What's the purpose? And then we can confront some of those deviations when we have purpose, right? Okay, we'll break.